lot of reading.
I can join.
200 pages to read.
Good afternoon, everyone. Call the meeting to order. Sorry for the slight delay.
Yeah.
And we have roll call. We have quorum. I'm sure we have quorum. Lots of people here. Any declarations of interest? Anyone? Adoption of the agenda. There's just one addition that I've added to the agenda, verbal report when we go into camera. So I need someone resolved that the agenda for February 9th, 2026 Board of Directors meeting be adopted as amended. Need someone to move that. All seconded by Jean. All in favor? Carry. Approval of the minutes. Resolved that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held January 12th, 2026 be received and approved as printed. Moved by seconded by that's all in favor? Carry. Item 2, employee preservation wetland restoration projects. First.
Can everyone hear me through this? Is this working? Yay! Okay. Awesome. Okay. So since 2023, we have implemented 9 wetland projects throughout our watershed. This has been 8 projects that we've done in Lanark County through our Alice, Mississippi REDO program, and 1 project that we've done in the city of Ottawa through our Ottawa Rural Clean Water program. That particular wetland happened before we expanded our boundaries for Alice. So in the future, we could, in theory, do both programs on 1 wetland. We also have 5 projects in the queue moving forward into 2026. I say projects, potential projects, they can change, obviously, and we are also still accepting expressions of interest for any projects that might come this way. You can see on this map here, all those purple dots are the projects that we've already done, and those orange dots represent projects that are hopefully going to be moving forward into 2026. All these projects have occurred on marginal farmland, so they're all on private properties in areas that are typically considered unsuitable for farming. Our goal is to never take productive agricultural land out of that production. Instead, we're looking at areas that maybe don't work for typical farming. So you can see in this photo on the upper side there, you can really see like a bit of a slope into that area where the vegetation looks quite different. That farmer really struggled to get any equipment into that area because it was so wet. And because the water was gathering there, it was also spreading into the adjoining fields. So by digging it out, we've made this lovely pond that you can see here at the bottom where all that water can then sit and stay instead of hopefully flooding into those fields. As part of these projects, we also hand plant or seed in the buffer zones. This is typically done right in the few weeks after establishment first starts. We really want to prevent any invasive species from moving in, which is why we try to do it so quickly. These plants also really help us to control any erosion. So as you can see, we get some banks when we do the dig out of the pond. So we really want to stop those from eroding into the water. Again, these are on agricultural lands, so we want to make sure we're filtering the runoff, and plants are a great way to do that. It'll also help us increase biodiversity and prevent any spread of invasive species. So to date, across those 9 projects, we've hand planted about 4,000 plants. In addition, there's been some seeding done as well. These projects are not only benefiting the participants who are joining these programs, but they also benefit our whole communities through a myriad of different ways. One of which is our flood protection, which is part of our mandate. You can see again in this picture, this is a before photo at the top. You can really see how wet this area is. Past that tree line, there's another field, a neighboring farm that's also flooding every year. So by digging out, hopefully we are preventing those floods from happening in the future. And then we have the flip side, which is drought protection. So wetlands are really great because they can help us with both. The photo on the bottom is that same site dug out in October 2025. Sure, we all remember October 25, we had quite a significant drought. So the fact that we're seeing any water in this wetland really does show us that it's doing its job. In addition, we're capturing a lot of carbon through wetland projects, even more so than through tree planting. We're helping filter out water, and then we're also providing a really diverse habitat for our local flora and fauna. You build it, they come. We get fish in these ponds within a year. Even if they're not online, they show up. These projects are not cheap, unfortunately, so we do have to work with funders as much as we can to get cost coverage for these projects. So we work with anybody, we chase after grants as much as possible. And thankfully, we've been pretty successful through a myriad of levels. We've gotten private funding from places like the Danby Foundation. We've gotten provincial funding from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, federal funding from Environment Climate Change Canada, and then local funding from Lanark County, and then also from the City of Ottawa through their Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program. We also work with our community partners to implement these projects. We really want to make sure our programs integrate and collaborate with existing stewardship programs. We're not in competition. We all have the same goals, so we try to work together where we can to implement these projects. We work a lot, of course, with Ducks Unlimited Canada. They're really experts in the field of wetland restoration, and they can also usually provide funding as well. So that, again, we're cost sharing, so those landowners are paying a little bit less to implement these projects. New in 2025, we've also started partnering with Watersheds Canada to do these projects. They help with those buffer zone plantings, bringing in staff resources and also funding as well. So all that leads to this chart here. To date, we've gotten $111,000 from grants solely to support project costs, equaling about 55% of costs. Our partners have brought in another 33% of about $68,000, leaving our landowners across these 9 projects paying about $25,000. This does also include any in-kind work they do, so any site prep, any maintenance they do on the site moving forward. So we're really keeping those costs as low as possible. If you do the math, it's about $25,000 to $30,000 a project, and they're only paying a couple thousand. And on the note of funding, we're looking forward into 2026. As I said, we have about 5 projects kind of in the queue with potential for more to come through. Thankfully, we've gotten some funding confirmed from the Danby Foundation again, and as well from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, with quite a large number from them. So we will hopefully be able to do quite a bit of restoration work through their funding. And then we anticipate getting funding again from Lanark County and potentially the RELP program, which is a joint provincial and federal program. Any questions?
Any questions?
You're not saying we. Who's we?
Me. That's, or yes, it is you guys actually. Yeah, so these are all done through either the ALICE program or the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program, which we run out of our office as a conservation authority.
Well, Alice is made up of volunteers in the community.
Yes, so we have an advisory committee through ALICE made up of 6 farmers and then the environmental coordinator from Lanark County. So when I want to do a project or a landowner comes to me with a project, I present that project to our advisory committee and they get the final say, yes or no, if this project moves forward.
And when you say that we are seeding it, are we doing that or is the landlord doing it?
So it depends. Typically it's us. So it's myself and our team. We go out and do the planting ourselves. With that new watersheds partnership, they're coming out as well. And then typically the landowner will come help. Sometimes they do all the seeding themselves, but hand planting we do. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, project in Ottawa.
So one was in Carp, and then right along the Carp River, basically, so on Carp Road. And then we have one potential going into next year in the Goleta area.
Just wondering, who writes the applications? Is that staff here?
So the landowner will submit like an expression of interest is what we call, and then I go on the site visit to confirm all those details with them, and then I create the presentation that goes to our committee for the project.
Yeah.
That make sense?
but the question is, you've been very successful from what I've seen of your breakdown of
Mhm.
finances. But is it the advisory committee or is it you?
I see. Sorry. Yes, I see what you're asking now. Yeah. So the grant, the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's us or me who typically would do that. Sometimes we get the funding top down from Alice, so they will also go after grants. I will go after grants myself. That's what I spend a lot of this time of year doing. And so it comes from two different spots.
Just wondering, how big of an area do you have to have to be eligible?
Typically, we'd look at about 0.5 of an acre is the smallest we'll do. We've done as low as 0.3 of an acre, but at that point, ducks won't be involved. They only are involved at about 0.5, but most of them end up being around 0.5, 0.6 acres. So they're not massive. Yeah.
Anything else? Richard?
How do, like this one, Alice was with farmers. How do we promote it to them?
Lots of ways. So we do a lot of outreach. I will be at the Ottawa Valley Farm Show next month if anyone's coming by. We also depend on a lot of farmer to farmer discussions on this. That is quite honestly how we get most of our projects. Say someone's sitting next to someone at a farm booth or the neighbors. That's typically how we get our projects coming through.
Thank you, Mr. for your presentation.
Thank you.
Water conditions. For those of you online, we're just having some technical difficulties with the presentation. Just a minute.
No, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. All right. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk about our watershed conditions. So starting off, I'm happy to share all positive green colors today, much nicer than we saw over the summer. So Mississippi River watershed, Carp River watershed, and the lower Ottawa River all in normal conditions as of January 16th. That's when we moved out of our low water conditions. There are currently no active watershed condition statements for flood or drought. So that's really nice to see. Looking at current conditions in more detail across the watershed, so drawdown on all lakes was completed by mid-January, and lake levels are generally within their winter target ranges. In general, stream flows across the watershed, I'm going to keep going, including Clyde, Fall, Carp, Indian, and the upper Mississippi rivers, all remain below average following the severe drought conditions observed over the summer and fall of 2025. However, flows in the lower Mississippi have approached average levels since operations at Crotch Lake Dam transitioned to drawdown, therefore augmenting downstream flows while lowering lake levels to create storage capacity for spring. And so the stream flows are depicted on the graphs on the right. I apologize, they're small, especially on the small screen. Blue represents the historical average flows, and orange represents the observed 2026 flows. So as you can see, the top one there is upper Mississippi and the lower is Carp. And those are below average. And then in the middle is the lower Mississippi, and that's meeting historical trends. The current operating objective is to create storage capacity in Crotch Lake by mid-March. And this is the one of interest is snow. So snow conditions are above average this season across the watershed. As of the most recent snow survey, which is reflective of like February 1st, the mean snow depth is 149% of normal. So that's reflective of 44 centimeter depth versus the average 29. And the mean snow water equivalent is 123% of normal, and that's 96 millimeters versus the typical 78. And that's compared to 2014 to 2024 historical data. As a reminder, snow water equivalent is the primary driver of snowmelt runoff. It represents the total amount of liquid stored within the snowpack. So our field team collects this information by collecting snow cores and determining both the depth and the weight of the snow. So simple way to think about SWE, or snow water equivalent, is to picture shoveling your driveway. You might receive a foot of fluffy light snow. It's super easy to shovel. The snow has a low SWE because it contains relatively little water. In contrast, you might receive only 10 centimeters of heavy wet snow, and that's much harder to shovel despite the lower depth. This snow has a higher SWE due to the greater water content. The graphs at the bottom of the slide highlight our new SWE tool implemented into our daily planning cycle. Euro Kunderlich, our Director of Engineering, and Daniel Post, our Data Systems Lead, did a great job putting this together. And this is going to be a really great tool to better assess SWE spatially, as we've separated similar trending station into 3 main areas. We've got the upper, mid, and lower watershed, as you can see on the graphs there. And shown in the map how we split up the stations. So the graphs depict SWE on the y-axis and snowpack period on the x-axis, which is between mid-November, typically mid-April. Historical median is shown in black, with the 75 and 25 percentile ranges in blue and the minimum maximum ranges in gray. And then the red line shows observed 2026. So of note, especially because it's harder to see, the upper watershed is beyond the quartile range versus like the lower watershed is just slightly above average. And again, for reference, it's hard to see, the upper watershed is sitting at 119 millimeters, mid is 95 millimeters, and lower is 73 millimeters. And if you don't know what millimeters refers to, when we look at these graphs and note that SWE is, say it's 100 millimeters in the upper watershed, this represents up to 100 millimeters of water stored in the snowpack. So if the snowpack were to melt instantaneously, not likely, but stay with me, all of the water converted directly to runoff, it would be equivalent to a 100 millimeter rainfall event over the same area. In reality, again, very unlikely. Typically, snow melt occurs gradually and a portion of the melt water is lost to infiltration, evaporation, surface storage, and soil absorption, particularly when melt occurs over an extended period. As a result, not all SWE translates directly to runoff, and the timing and rate of melt are just as important as the total amount of water stored in the snowpack. Apologies, that was lots on snow, but that's the interesting part right now. Looking ahead, so short-term forecast continues to see light precipitation. We've got more coming Tuesday, Wednesday this week. And again, I put this together last week, so colder temperatures, I'm hoping those are behind us now. We've had a lot of cold temperatures. It's looking nicer for the long weekend. Hopefully we can get on the canal. And then the long-term forecast published by Environment and Climate Change Canada for a period of February, March, and April suggests that temperature and precipitation is expected to be near normal or below average. And that is generally with a low probability. You can see there kind of 40, 50, 30, 40%. So in all, not a very confident forecast that we have looking forward yet, which kind of leads to what are we expecting? MVCA has no confident flood outlook at this time. Based on the current above average snowpack conditions, the watershed could be at risk for a higher than normal spring peak on the Mississippi River. This is also largely dependent, again, on spring rainfall and temperatures as to how quickly that snowpack melts and to what impact. So we'll be able to give you a better assessment. We'll reassess in March and provide maybe more detail on that outlook. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize if you already mentioned this, but I'm wondering if you could give us some insight into the snow water equivalent that you're seeing now versus some historical years where we have seen either minor or major flooding, 2023, for instance. Do we have a comparison to 2023 or 2029 based on the snow water equivalent?
It's a great question, definitely, because I know this winter was supposed to best match the 2024-2025 winter, actually, um, from Environment Climate Change Canada. But it's really hard to say with regards to melt because those conditions rely so much on temperatures and rain that are projected now months in advance. So snowpack, again, you can see we're well above average, especially the upper watershed. We're outside of our 50th percentile. But that depends if we get, a couple warm days this weekend and we start to see that come down and we see some melt and then, does it gradually go into spring or are we going to see it all at once? So it's really hard to determine at this point.
And in terms of the storage capacities in the reservoir, because we're coming out of such a dry year, does that mean there's more room or do they just draw down to the same levels that they normally would on any given year? Or are we lucky this year in the sense that if we do have additional water in the system that we can handle it based on the low water that we had last summer?
Great question. So I did mention our stream flows are below average, but our lake levels are generally within our winter target ranges. So in the fall, we did have to do a delayed fall drawdown again because some of the water levels were just naturally lower. But we did draw down levels to typical expectations, so within our winter ranges. So there's no really additional capacity compared to normal.
And I know there are a lot of variables, but this is an election year, so I am expecting a flood this year. Yeah.
No, that's
Thank
all
you.
good. Hopefully we have some better looking forward in March, but
Hey, Richard.
When we're talking about the snowpack, you didn't, I think we've been told before that when it comes to spring, it's the rain that makes the biggest difference, not the snow. That this, I sort of thought the number was like 20% of the flood was the snow. And the big variable is if we get a big rain in March or April.
absolutely. Yeah, no, the rain is more so direct runoff and the snow melt again. Exactly. So, and the snow, it depends on how it melts too. So the rain is definitely a big one. The worst is if you get both at once. You get some warm temperatures, you get some ripe snow that's got some high sweets, it's kind of lowered in depth, and then you get a rain event on top of that. Let's not hope that happens, but definitely the rain is a large driver even of snow melt, but definitely a larger driver of flooding conditions. Which is also partially why I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen because I don't trust the weather forecast for tomorrow, let alone a month away.
Any other questions? Kevin, just in North Frontenac, as you know, our lakes were really low at the end of the year there.
Yes.
No matter what happens with the snow and the rain, this is the benefit to the lakes up there.
Good to hear. Yeah, I think everyone wants a bit of a recharge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, or GM.
So not a whole lot to report. The key thing I wanted to flag is that team is currently working on in home stretch of delivering the floodplain mapping for tributaries on the Park River. So Councillor Kelly, I think maybe already reached out to your office is starting to meet with you sometime in the next couple of weeks to brief you in advance of the open house that's planned for mid-March. So yeah, that's the big thing coming down the pipe. Of course, the Fall River, once the board signed off on it, we put notices in the paper and provided the finalized mappings to pay Valley. It's the primary Valley. Our permit processing timings and volumes for 2025 are summarized. This is a report we have to put together and submit to the province every year. And we continue to meet timelines most of the time. there are always exceptions that, you know, for various reasons might not. It can be due to resubmissions or incomplete submissions during subsequent, you know, follow-ups and the like. So, but I would say overall, we're doing very, very well. And the other thing, we just got a new vehicle, which is always nice. Certain vehicles are definitely reaching the end of their life, and so we appreciate the board funded us, approved our capital program to allow for replacement of that vehicle. The last thing I would touch on is the Alto corridor. So I did attend the meeting a couple of weeks ago now. It was very interesting. I don't know how many of you have participated in those meetings, but you know, the emphasis from my perspective that we were putting forward was, you know, drainage patterns matter. It can have huge consequences if you start disrupting them, both for, you know, farmland and the like, as well as natural systems. So we are strongly encouraging them to, wherever possible, maintain existing drainage patterns. The challenge they run into, as I understand it, is they want it as straight as possible and it's fully fenced because of the heat. So there are practical considerations that they're trying to grapple with. So people in the room that I was in, they're saying, okay, but to a point. So anyway, imagine all of your municipalities have been consulted with and see where this goes. So I don't need to delve into anything else, but happy to answer any questions people might have.
Any questions for Sally? Richard?
The annual invasive species, is that our goal or is that somebody else putting it on?
Oh, it's not us. No, it's somebody else. I just put it in there because it might be of interest to some board members or your staff.
You know, who's putting it on? Anyway. I'll take a walk. Sorry.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
Any other questions? For Sally? So I think give you an idea, sure, location of the high speed train.
Well,
I know there's two corners. Sure, everybody would like to know.
it's 200
so the only thing they said about location is right now they're dealing with 10-kilometer swaths. Next stage will be 1-kilometer swaths. And then the stage after that will be final alignment. Another interesting thing along that lines was they said 2 years to complete the EA is, if I understood correctly, for the entire corridor. And just so you guys know, I mean, took us 18 months or more to do the whole cash back that. Yeah. So I'm just incredulous on how they may or may not, even just doing Montreal Ottawa corridor in under 2 years. So very aggressive schedule.
Yeah, no, we have the public health station in Perth and March of the and but when they came to our council, they had said that they would have the route picked out by end of January, obviously. They didn't know the route, but they just haven't told us that.
Yeah.
Sure. I know. Okay. Go on for questions. Oh, I think.
Just part of your report, you did talk about this part of your report, it's emergency management, civil protection.
Yeah.
I found it kind of strange that conservation authorities wouldn't have any response role. I mean, if it was a big flood, like your report said with no role. Like really.
Yeah. So the division of responsibilities is if we operate links, which we do at this CA, that's our focus, is making sure people are warned, you know, we have current information. So it's the flood forecasting warnings, it's type of information we just received from Patrick, and to operate the system as best we can to mitigate the flood. From a response and recovery perspective.
Okay.
On that note, so do other conservation authorities do forecasting?
All of them.
They don't control the dams, but they still do forecasting.
Yeah, it's a mandatory service.
Okay, no, it makes sense because we operate the dams, which is then their own business.
But you just don't have to say you don't have emergency response role, but you were there for information.
Yeah,
Because our emergency, I just went through it to our meeting this morning and your name was there.
yeah. So maybe that's the too strong a statement.
Right.
It's the most current information possible. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And if we were talking draft, and admittedly I was speaking on flood, we actually have a coordination call. So I should have been a little more nuanced in that statement. Okay.
Any other questions before we move on? Right, seeing none, item 5, bylaw amendment regarding veterans. P&P, colleagues, you want to talk with us first?
I think we've had a good conversation with the PNP committee meeting, and there's an amendment put forward by Glenn Gower, which the committee approved. And so the amended motion for consideration by the board says the Policy and Planning Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve amendment of MVCA's administrative bylaw to address how abstention shall be handled during voting as set out in report 35, 38, 26, and as amended by the PNP Advisory Committee. So I don't know if everybody's had the chance to read the motion or the amendment that was put forward. I do have a slide, but maybe just in the interest of time, rather than trying to deal with that, it says, every member present at a meeting shall vote unless ineligible due to a statutory requirement, in which case it shall be recorded. Any member who the chair can confirm is present in person or through electronic means and does not vote shall be reported as voting in the negative. A majority vote shall be calculated based upon the number of eligible members present. A member may change their vote anytime before announcement of the result by the chair or immediately following announcement of the result by the chair if a request to change a vote is unanimously agreed upon by the members of attendance. So this is a combination of the amendments put forward by Lang as well as the original motion tabled to the committee. So, and I think that this captures the feeling in the room when we met as a board previously, where people felt people should vote, and provides clarity about if they don't vote, how that vote, lack of a vote will be handled. It also provides clarity about what constitutes a majority, which interestingly very few bylaws actually do. So it provides clarity about that. And then this business about if you want to change your vote, it's now.
Discussion? We talked about this a lot. That's over here. No questions? Why do you make the motion? That's not the change, right?
Correct.
All right, we will read the motion. Resolved that the Board of Directors approve amendment of the MVCA's administrative bylaw to address how abstentions shall be handled during voting, as spelled out in report 3538/26, as amended by the Policy and Planning Advisory Committee. And you come to move that, Dana. Second, Paul. All in favor? Carried. That's fine. Moving on to number 6, review of MVC's code of conduct for board members. I know there's. Go ahead.
Okay. So I did review our code of conduct against other documents. What's recommended in the municipal act that, you know, what a code of conduct should address. And so it met the requirements under the municipal act. It's almost identical to the standard code of conduct that was produced some years ago by Conservation Ontario. And it addresses most of the items that we identified in both Ottawa and Langer license, but that's not to the same detail. So candidly, it's not a short document. And because it was hitting the various marks, and one can always nuance a document, I was reticent to open it up to try to make it perfect, because I felt that that might be challenging to do. So I felt that because the board had previously approved this and it
I could check all the boxes that I found. Unless somebody felt that there was something in particular that they felt was egregious, that I was comfortable just having it stay the same.
Richard?
Yeah, so the only thing I would change is what I reference that page. So
Page 33 of the, check.
33, it says any director, direct or indirect pecuniary interest or conflict of interest when one exceeds or may exceed. And I think it should just go just at the end of that, in brackets, as defined in the municipal code of conflict or interest act. So that you know what it is. Like most municipalities have one that quotes it and then they add in a few extras. But if we just the bare minimum, the act, then we know what we're talking about.
We have something written up here for that. Dan?
Well, just with the changes coming down from the province, is this going to be redone with the new format of conservation authorities anyways?
I suspect it might be revisited. They might come up with a standard one for across the province or the new regional board, whatever that looks like. I don't have a problem adding in that clarification. So I did draft a motion if you want to table it as a motion.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Support that. Any other questions? Comments? All right, so we're gonna vote on this, Shane. No, okay, go ahead, Reed.
Okay, so be it resolved that MVCA's code of conduct be amended to include the following clause following the bullet dealing with pecuniary interest or conflict of interest in accordance with Municipal Act SO 2001.
Okay.
Yeah,
That work?
Skater says, I think most of it says as 2000 or as amended, because it's amended.
That's
It's a living document.
Somebody tell me to move that. First. Kathy? All in favor? Carried. Item 7. Back. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. Just an update on the Mill of Kintail Museum working group. So in October of last year, the board meeting there, the terms of reference for the group were approved. Basically to help staff conduct a feasibility analysis on, I guess, the case for retaining the collection in the museum or elsewhere. We also, as part of the process, we've retained Eric Lockhart. And if you would remember, the Eric Lockhart, he's from the Smith School of Business at Queen's. He helped facilitate the session with the board for strategic planning in the fall that we held at the Mill of Kintail as well. So Eric's been a big help in starting to move the process along with the working group. So this is what the final membership list looked like. We did cast a bit of a larger net when we sent out invites, and these are the groups that have been kind enough to volunteer their time to be part of the process. So as you see, we have membership from our own Mill of Kintail Museum Advisory Committee, North Lanark Regional Museum, City of Ottawa, the Naismith family, Ottawa Community Foundation, Municipality of Mississippi Mills,
the Mississippi Mills Textile Museum, Leonard County Arts and Heritage Committee, and the Mississippi Mills Community Foundation. So these are all folks that it's a fairly well-rounded group. And these are all the folks that have been kind enough to volunteer their time to be part of the solution. So it's a little bit smaller, so I'll try and take everybody through the timeline. So the initial meeting was on January 21st. We started off with a tour of the facilities. We toured the museum. We toured the archives that are in the gatehouse, as well as the office space that's in the gatehouse as well. We then came back here, and it was followed by discussion to start the process and look to focus, the efforts of the group in the right direction. So they started off by developing criteria to help evaluate some of the options that might come forward in terms of ownership and operation of the collection. So I say developing criteria, some of the top picks from the group were must provide a safe holding spot for the collection, must preserve the historical value of the collections, must ensure the public has access to the collection, and must have a board governance model with proper policies in place. So that's just the top kind of echelon of what was developed, but that kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of being able to develop the criteria for evaluating options. It then went on to talk about some of the ownership options that were in place. So it was a discussion amongst the table, and different ideas were brought forward, and then went through a voting process, which kind of narrowed it down to the top 5, as you see on the screen here. So the idea of consolidation between Mississippi Mills museums, so not necessarily owned and operated by the municipality at this point. We're just talking the 3 separate museums that are within Mississippi Mills District. So it would be the Textile Museum, North Lanark, and then us at the Mill of Kintail. So a consolidation of 2 or more of those organizations. A new organization, which hasn't necessarily been formed as of yet. So members of our Museum Advisory Committee originally had spoken about possibly creating their own organization, their own board of directors to be, part of the process. Ownership of the collection by the municipality of Mississippi Mills, an existing heritage organization or museum, which again could be outside of those that are already mentioned, so outside of those that would reside within Mississippi Mills. And then we also talked about the possibility of involving a university as part of the process as well. So then we got into our follow-up meeting in which was just recently, so beginning of the month, so February 4th. It was a review of the pros and cons of the options that came up, so the 5 options that were discussed here. We did receive 2 official expressions of interest, one from North Lanark and one from the Textile Museum, which were presented at the meeting there. And a couple of questions came out of those, and it brought up some good discussion. And it was good to see that we do have 2 expressions of interest by organizations that do fit the criteria that the group has been discussing. There has been the issue of property being included in the discussion has been brought forward by a handful of group members. However, this falls outside of the mandate of the working group. And again, we also have the 2 expressions of interest that are on the table that do not involve land as part of that plan at this point. Similarly, our land conservation and resource strategy does not speak to any intention of the organization of divesting of this property. Excuse me. So we've just scheduled our next meeting. So our next meeting will be February 18th. At that point, we're going to present to the group a draft REOI for feedback and input. So I think the goal will be to put out a public call for expressions of interest to be able to close the loop and make sure that that gets out into the public in case we've missed an interested party that could be part of this process. We're also going to be looking for possible distribution channels, and we'll discuss further timelines for the process. So, and then as we get into the next steps for the group itself, it'll be the review of the REOIs that do come in. The one thing we've kind of flagged is we may need to revisit membership and mandate of the working group due to potential conflicts of interest. So as we've already talked about, so the two expressions of interest that have come in are by people that are sitting at this table. So we're just in the discussion of will we be able to properly evaluate some of these ideas that are being brought in with those sitting around the table. So again, we're just flagging it as a piece of discussion for the group. So as we get into, and hopefully you can, I'll explain it a little better. It's a little small on the screen there. But again, it kind of takes us through the timeline of where we have been to where we're heading. So the unfortunate part, so we did apply to the province for an extension for our community museums operating grant, and we were unfortunately denied. So the two things we've learned is they're not going to budge on when that due date is, which is at the very end of the timeline here on June 30th. And it's also a fixed amount that is basically it's earmarked for each museum year after year. So that amount, we don't have the potential to get any more funding out of them. It's kind of, we're at the top of our threshold for that. So in order for us to be able to meet the province's deadline on their submission and still be eligible for funding, this entire process needs to be closed up by June 30th. So as part of the submission this year, it requires a 5-year strategic update. So the strategic plan that was done in 2019 is due for update this year. And again, that's kind of what started the process that we're on now. So as we move forward, again, we're looking at after the next meeting and the feedback that we get from the group, we'll be looking at issuing a public REOI to call for expressions of interest. Later in mid-March, it'll turn into an actual RFP process of those that do express interest. And the hope, again, it's a tight timeline and a tight turnaround, but the hope is to bring the results of that to the board meeting on May 11th to have hopefully the solution, that we've come to approved by the board. And then at that point, we'll be able to hopefully turn around a strategic plan update to be able to meet the funding requirements to be able to submit to the province for our CMOG funding. So that's the goal. If anything I could say about the group, and at this point where we are in the process, we do have momentum. There are passionate people that are sitting around that table. We do have focus. It's been, in focus in the media and in the community now for weeks. So now is the time to kind of make hay and to really put a stake in the ground and hopefully, get to a point where we have a solution that is best for everybody. So hopefully we continue to use that momentum towards the best possible solution and in a timely manner. As you can see, it's a pretty strict timeline that we're on, but we're hopeful we'll be able to put things to bed in a timely manner.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions? Comments?
I'm gonna channel John Carreau and ask, was the National Capital Commission asked to participate and then they just declined? Is that?
Yes, exactly. So there was a larger list that we went out with on in terms of invitations. And the NCC, a lot similar to a lot of organizations, the people that are in charge of their historical properties and the museums and stuff like that, it's a very small department and they're already spread thin. So unfortunately, they weren't able to join in official capacity, but they did always make the offer that they're there for any questions and stuff that do come up. So we've been able to reach out to them on a couple of things to do with the museum, but they weren't able to offer to be part of the group.
They would be submitting an ROEI.
That way, we did ask them. We made an official ask months ago, and they don't see a way where they would be part of the solution in that sense.
Richard.
That deadline for funding, is that for all municipalities or is it just when this one comes up?
This is just, so that's for the museum grant that we get, but that's their deadline for provincial funding for anybody that would be applying for CMOG funding.
So the other two is going to be in the ones looking at, they'll be in the same.
Likely, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Scott. On to item 8. Professor policy. Yes. 2026 budget. Basically, so.
Actually, it's what.
Right.
Yeah. Kelly? You guys, all right, how about I start to talk? Wow. Oh, it's uploaded.
May be able to speak to it before the PowerPoint actually gets uploaded. Okay, so in a nutshell, we did circulate. Is this on? Okay.
Stop it. We have to move the mic closer to.
Hold on a second.
There we go. Yes. So you can go to the slide here. Oh, yeah, and down 2 slides. Thank you. Actually, just go to there and I'll take care of it. That's all right. Go ahead. Thank you, Alex. Okay. So, the budget changed very little since you approved the draft version in December for circulation. There's absolutely no change in the assumptions regarding the levy. So everything that you signed off on in October that was carried forward in December is still holds true here. So absolutely no impact on the levy from what you already signed off on in December. There have been, however, some changes, both board approved changes and some additional changes that we are now proposing to you. So you approved us changing our fees. So that actually is a good news story in that we were able to increase projected revenues. So that's on the positive side. In terms of the museum and transition master plan work that Scott had already spoken to, we had notionally initially just 1,500 in the budget for that. We should have, but didn't include the working group facilitator costs because you did approve that back in October. So that was an oversight on our part. It should have been in the draft version. And then we've added, and this is for your consideration today, the legal fees of 7,500 because we feel that as we move forward with negotiations with whoever the preferred, I'll say, vendor is or recipient of the collections, that will need legal counsel on that. And then in terms of amalgamation, we had bits of money at different places. That's the legal and other consulting 35,000 that you approved back in December. We decided for ease of tracking so that if we in future we are able to do cost recovery from the province, that we amalgamated those line items into an amalgamation line item. And we've also added in the transition costs that you approved at the January meeting in camera, so that the net impact on the operating reserve requirement is an additional pressure of 24,750. So it's a very modest net impact on what you approved in December. So the 2 line items that are affected are the corporate services, all matters related to amalgamation, and then the conservation services, which is related to the museum. So it's a very modest change over what was previously. And then you can see that the changes were all within the category 1 operating side of things in terms of the pressures on the museum strategic plan. Maybe I might have to get clarification from you on that, but the pressure on category 1 related to mainly the amalgamation. I'm just curious, the costs related to, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at Stacy for those at home, so to speak. I'm just thinking this through aloud myself. We saw pressures on the operating side in terms of the costs of amalgamation offset by the costs of or the revenues from the fees, both mandatory services. So, but I'm not seeing here the operating category 3, the pressures associated with them.
Affects the site. We put it under conservation areas.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. So for those who may not have heard that answer, her clarification is that 1,500 that was originally budgeted in the December version of the budget was for update, not just of the museum master plan, but the whole site. So now, because what happens at the museum has the potential to affect the whole site, she carried it through under category 1. Yes, Richard?
Right, or have you not put the legal in yet? That's a question for today, but
So the numbers you see here in this table reflect those pressures that that I mentioned just on that previous slide. So yes, the legal is in here.
so how could you justify that as in the whole? Is it not a category 3?
So as Scott mentioned, some people have put on the table elements relating to the whole site, easements, land acquisition, other things. So those legal agreements, depending on where this all goes, have the potential to affect far more than just the museum collection. When the board approved the terms of reference, it pertained simply to the collection and the ability for people to use, we were very specific, the museum building, the area right immediately adjacent where we have tea on the lawn, and the gatehouse and elements of the gatehouse. The scope that the committee or the working group is discussing is now comprising other things that were not contemplated by this board. That's why we've upped the legal, because if we start down that road, it's going to be very complicated and it does affect the entire site. Thank you for that clarification and the question. Okay, so it obviously impacts by that 24,750, the projected drawdown and net balance in the reserve. But so this is the reserve balance. Projected reserve balances and the allocations to be made in 2026. So again, this 301,000 reflects that net pressure of the 24,750. So it's a very modest change over what you approved in December. So when you look at the budget in December and you look at the budget today, it's a difference, net difference of just under 25,000. So very modest change. And we had no requests from any of your municipalities to meet or present to your councils. Yes?
So that 25 is an extra 25 when you get to the bottom line
So,
budget.
so because of those additional pressures, the money has to come from somewhere
That's what I mean. It's 25,000 more than we had approved.
in December.
And it's coming from reserves.
Correct. You got it. So,
Any other questions? Well, comments? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Resolve that the board of directors approve the 2026 budget as submitted. Move 5. All. And all in favor? Carry. Next is finance station for the budget and fraud. What do you do? Item 9, proposed fee schedule amendment. Looking at that.
Everybody hear me? All right, good afternoon, everyone. So just here to talk to you about, update you on our proposed fee schedule amendment that was brought to you guys in January meeting with the 3% increase across the board. So
the implementation of the new planning regulation fees was to commence on March 1st of 2025. And at the time, this aligned with both SNC, so South Nation Conservation Authority, and RVC, Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, for their implementation. Since then, RVCA has had to delay their implementation date to April 1st. So we're bringing forward a change for the implementation date of our fee schedule just for the city of Ottawa. And this is related to that the city of Ottawa collects the fees for all 3 CAs and then distributes them to our VCA, who then disperses them correctly to ourselves and South Nation Conservation Authority. So in order to keep that harmonization of the collection of fees and the disbursement of them, it's necessary to move the implementation date of the new fee schedule to April 1st at this time. All other municipalities, so the 10 other municipalities, they've all received notices from us about the new fee schedules. We've received 4 comments back. 3 were simply just stating that they had no concerns around the increase. 1 comment did come back that notified 3 areas where there was additional changes that could be made to bring our fee schedule in line with South Nation Conservation Authority and Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. So those are highlighted in the report for you. So it's an update to the fee for the clearance of conditions to $245 to match with those other 2 CAs, as well as for the part lot control, an update of that fee. So that fee was actually a new one that we added onto the fee schedule in January. So in doing that, the transcription of the fee was actually, that was an error by myself. And I put the wrong fee across there. So it's a new one that will be updated to match the other 2 conservation authorities. And then there was the addition of the minor rural fee related to site plans for multiple residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional. So this was one that we previously did not have on our fee schedule. So that would have left our staff to choose between 2 higher fees. This is a new fee that's being added in that's lower for those, and that's in line with South Nation and Rideau Valley again. In addition to that, there is a small administrative amendment that's attached to this as well, related to the septic fees. So that is Schedule H. So it is necessary for our board to approve those changes in the fee schedule. But we are not actually setting the fees. Those are set by Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. So they've asked that we bring it forward so that it can be accepted by our board.
Any questions or comments for Ben? Richard?
So Ottawa was the only municipality collects the fees.
Yes, so they collect on a regular basis. So we had went through it last year where most municipalities weren't collecting the fees on our behalf. So we've started to indicate that we'll collect those on our own. But City of Ottawa does collect for all 3 CAs and then disperses them to our VCA.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Resolved that the Board of Directors approve A, minor modifications and corrections to fee schedules A through C as set out in attachment 1, per the result of public circulation. B, a delay in the implementation of fee schedules A through C in the City of Ottawa until April 1st, 2026. And C.
I can't see how, so you're saying half the residents in Beckwith are going to be not paying an increase till April, and the other half will
Go ahead.
So all the residents in the city of Ottawa will pay new fees April 1st. Everybody outside the city of Ottawa will pay new fees effective March 1st.
But half of Beckwith is in Rideau Valley?
No, it has nothing to do with conservation area or authority. It has to do with municipality. So just
I think in the report it said Rideau is not opening theirs till April.
that's correct. So that's the reason why
Yeah,
within the city of Ottawa, we're delaying it till April.
right. So in Beckwith Township, anybody in Rideau Valley and Rideau will be paying one set of fees, and in Mississippi will be paying another set.
Yes, but the key is that you're not collecting them on our behalf.
But they'll know their neighbors. I'm just saying, it doesn't seem fair in one municipality that you have 2 different rates.
Ben? You want to comment?
So the rate will harmonize once Rideau Valley
Yeah.
comes in. So there is that month gap. You're absolutely right in that. And that's not just in your municipality. There's a number of municipalities. And fortunately with this is that when we brought the original report forward to the board, Rideau Valley was scheduled to do it on March 1st as well. And then they changed.
So I just don't know why we didn't change it for the month. Cause it will be confusion. Even our staff they'll have to know which conservation authority the application's in, because they're gonna have to post them 2 different prices per month.
I know.
For in those situations, our staff is actually providing the quote. So your planner actually reached out to me when we sent out. He was going to charge the new fee last week, and I said no, it doesn't come into until March 1st. And I did say during the transition period, our staff will be providing to proponents and your planners that what the fee will be for each application type to make sure that there isn't that issue going forward. But your point around if moving to April 1st for all municipalities, that is something that.
Anyway.
Okay.
Well, just to follow up on what Richard's saying, and to your admission, his township is not the only one, so.
No.
How difficult would it be that we coordinate and move the date so that it's the same?
It's at the will of the board, so it's not an issue.
Okay, well then I would like to make that motion to move the date.
Just a question, what other municipalities are involved?
Drummond.
Drummond, Canada.
So 3 municipalities in this one. What's the financial impact?
Right.
But it's negligible.
It's just confusion. Communication.
Are Rideau Valley as well.
Rural people are very picky, it doesn't matter.
It's fine.
Well, this hasn't been repeated, so do you want to put an amendment onto this motion or?
So it would be amendment to B, delaying the implementation of fee schedules A through C until, we'll just remove into the city of Ottawa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So Richard,
just not worth the communication.
Okay, can you read out the new B then?
Okay, so B now reads a delay in the implementation of fee schedules A through C until April 1st, 2026.
And C, update fee schedule H as set out in attachment 2 for septic service delivered by Rideau Valley Conservation Authority within the jurisdiction of MVCA. So I'm going to move that. Oh.
Yeah, we'll have to vote on that.
All right. I have an appointment in her.
So we have Richard and Dana made the approved, put forward the motion at the amending motion. So
All in favor for that? Approved.
now we need the mover and seconder for the main motion.
Paul. And Richard. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. Item number 10, verbal report itself.
There's nothing to report. I put this in as a placeholder because Friday afternoons couldn't bother to make it now. That I might have something to say today, but I so.
Just move the agenda on. Item 11, verbal report by myself. Resolved that the board of directors move to in-camera session for discussion on personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including employees of the authority, and further resolved that all MVCA staff leave the room. Need someone to move that? Jeannie? Bev seconds it. All in favor? Carried. So adjournment, resolve the board of directors meeting be adjourned. You need someone to move that? Jeannie? Paul? All in favor? Gary, thank you very much.
Well, that was in German. I missed it.
All right, so I want to ask you for this. Bring it to the next meeting. Okay, send you a reminder. Yours is really, really good. That's what I made.